folks, welcome back to Reality Check with Arvind Swaminathan. Nice to see, very nice news indeed. Believe me, Chandrayan 3, soft landing on the moon. It hit the world like a horrendous earthquake, 9 or 10 on the Richter scale. Why? The whole equation has changed. Not only the fact that it was done and it had a soft landing, but what does it mean? This whole gig was planned and executed for just 600 crores, which is peanuts compared to what it cost the US to do it. Now just think, 600 crores. You know the recent movie Adipurush? That cost 700 crores to make. So this is less than the cost of a movie. Mind-boggling, isn't it? And yet, we did it, not the Americans or the Russians or the Chinese. Now add to that one other thing. The moment it's done, everybody wants to take credit. I mean, I don't know what you call him, a madman or just dopey. Rahul Gandhi said, Nehru laid the foundations of all this. What kind of nonsense is that? In fact, Nehru had nothing to do with ISRO. ISRO was set up by Mr. Vikram Sarabhai. Let there be no two ways about that. Let there be no questioning that. The money for that never came from the government of India or Nehru. When Mr. Homi Bhabha, Dr. Homi Bhabha wrote to Nehru, Nehru stalled him and said, look, I'm going away for a bit. Don't bother coming now because we're going to be very busy. In other words, he said, sorry, no. And where did the money come from initially? Homi Bhabha had spoken with J.R.D. Tata way back in 1945. A result or consequence of that was the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research was set up. And it was this TIFR, or Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, which provided the initial money for setting up of ISRO, with J.R.D. Tata's blessing. So where did Nehru come in from? You see what I mean? I've said this before. Everybody wants to pinch credit for it, especially that family. Everything must be named after them. Only that seems to be acceptable to them and to, of course, the Congress. Now let's go into it a little further. Why did it hit like an earthquake? The two most important space research centers in the world today are NASA in the US and ISRO in India. The difference being 30 to 35% of NASA's scientists are of Indian origin, whereas all the ISRO scientists are homegrown products. Now supposing those 30-35% came back to India, where would NASA be? Now please note one other thing. Wherever Prime Minister Modi goes, he makes time to have a word with Indian diaspora, whichever country he goes. Wherever he goes, you see the numbers who attend those meetings or those get-togethers. Thousands. What are they doing there? This was the Congress party's, how shall I put it, mantra. If you are capable, intelligent, get out, you don't belong here. In India, we only want mediocrities. And I quote, this is Mr. Narsim Rao. 1991 to 95. He made this statement in public. Let there be no two ways about that. Now for Rahul Gandhi to claim that Nehru laid the foundations, I mean, it beggars belief. Now let's get back to Chandrayan. And I said it hit the world like an earthquake. 9 or 10 on the Richter scale. Why? Modi ji, ever since he came in, has changed or reversed everything. I remember growing up under immense pressure and so many disappointments. Not because I was incapable, but because my environment was not allowing me to do anything. If I looked like doing well, there would be somebody to knock me on the head and put me down. The attitude was, never let anybody come up, because it shows everybody else up. One example, as a 12-year-old, I was in the team as a bowler. In a whole inning, I get 3 overs. I was told to open, and my own other opening partner runs me out in both innings of the same game. Why? Because I looked as if I was using a straight bat and beginning to find my way. So of course I had to be stopped. Whatever confidence I had in me had to be destroyed, which they almost did. Otherwise I too would have been a pretty good middle distance runner. Not average, well above average. But again, cheating and ensuring that I don't come anywhere near the top group. Now this I found wherever I went. Wherever you look, you saw this. Nobody being allowed to do anything, and if one looks like doing a good job, somebody will drag him down. The attitude we had in our minds, what's the point? Why should I do anything? It's not going to happen anyway. It's not going to make any difference. And the result is all these people are spread out all over the world, doing very well, thank you. But not in India. Even industry used to get so fed up, quite often they just wind up and go somewhere else. Now, Modi ji and his particular mantra and his way of doing things has reversed that trend. Not only are people staying back here, but people who've been abroad are beginning to come back. Now what does that do? It reverses the whole supply chain. Supply of trained manpower, educated, trained brains. In India, certainly in the last 4 or 5 decades, the brain drain has been a very real drain on our resources. We put up all these education institutions, the IIMs, IITs, and so on. But most of those graduates used to go abroad. Now they're finding place here. Big change. All of the Western Europe and the US is getting really worried now. Why? Where will they get their trained manpower from? If they have to train their own, in the first instance, it's very expensive. Anything here is much cheaper. Remember Chandrayan 3? 600 crores? How much would it have cost the US to do the same thing? Think about that. So, to train their own staff, their own youngsters, for them it would be unheard of. It would be one heck of a kick in the pants. No wonder they don't like Modi. And then we've got all these Jaychans and such like in India. What is a Jaychand? A real traitor. Usually someone close to the center. Jaychand was the brother-in-law of Prithviraj Chauhan, if you remember. People in India would understand. Or Mir Jafar. All, or in both cases, people who are not all that good, who wanted to be top dog by handing over their own toppers, by destroying their own elite, even if it was their own relative. Now, you make up your own minds on this. When Rahul Gandhi goes to the US and UK and says, democracy is dying in India. What is the West? What are the US, the EU and the UK doing to save democracy in India? That's a direct invitation to intervene. Is that not a Mir Jafar? Or a Jaychand? Is this the type way of leadership we want here? And who is this man in touch with? Rahul Gandhi, I mean. George Soros? The US government? The UK government? And EU leaders? Why are they pandering to this man? Why do they want him? Well, they want him in charge in India because they can begin to loot India all over again. It's taken us 70 years to become the 5th largest economy in the world. They think, now we can start looting this place again, as they did prior to 70 years ago. And with somebody like Rahul Gandhi in charge, well, he's facilitated at very low prices. He's a bargain deal. You can see that. I mean, how cheap it is when you start claiming your ancestor, in the name of Jawaharlal Nehru, laid the foundation for ISRO, knowing very well he did nothing of the sort. And the UPA government repeated that. When Chandrayan 1 crashed, they stopped funding or reduced funding to about half the level needed for the second one. That's why it took so long. Now you think Chandrayan 2, okay, it crash landed in the last minute or so. Okay. But Mr. Modi did not cut off funding for it. He put his arm around the ISRO chief and said, look, learn from this mistake for the next one. And they did learn. If you notice, Chandrayan 2, it just went straight down like this and crashed. But this one came down, stopped and hovered, came down a bit more, stopped, hovered a bit, came down a bit more, stopped, hovered, and then a soft landing. As I said, I think it was Frank Sinatra's song, nice and easy does it every time. And it worked here. As a lesson, look, the Soviet lunar probe took 10 days to get to the moon. 11th day it crash landed on the moon. Chandrayaan 3 took 43 days to get there and then a few hours just to get down, the last couple of 100 kilometers. Everything in its own time. To rush would be to invite disaster. Now, the main thing, what Mr. Modi has done and the BJP government has done, any failure is not something to be laughed at. Their attitude has been to give the person encouragement and say, look, okay, how many times did Edison fail before that light came up or it lit up? very normal and good example. You may not succeed the very first time, but try and keep trying until you do. Work out of the flaws, all the mistakes and blunders. This is it, you see. This particular government has filled this country about with hope. He has replaced the old despair and desperation and despondency with hope and a new look for the future. You see, the old-timers and the administration, well, Mr. Modi found it very difficult to work with the administration because it's full of such people. They are still the colonial powers. They still believe they own India. They and these political Maharaja families. I don't understand where they got it from, but, well, you know, as they say, power goes to people's heads. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's where it comes from. Now this is the biggest gift that Mr. Modi and the BJP has given India. Hope, self-belief that yes, we can do it. The Congress party since 1947 has been telling us, or the British started telling us from 1835, that if you're Indian, you're useless, you can't do it. Anything made in India is useless. If it comes from Britain, it's great. This is what we were led to believe. And for 70 years we believed it. But in the last 5 or 6, things have turned right over. And this is Mr. Modi's greatest gift to India and Indians. Self-belief. Yes, we can. Whatever it is, we can do it. We're not useless. We have the ability. We can do it. That self-belief was not there 8-9 years ago. Trust me. I've seen it in action. And you see some of these retired people, even they're youngsters, they still have this mindset. But a lot of them have got out of it. The attitude being, why can't I do it? Let me have a damn good try at it. They do and they succeed. This is Modi ji's gift to India. Self-belief. The belief that yes, we can do it. We know better maybe, but we certainly know worse than anybody else. We can look the world in the eye. And when the world looks at us today, it looks up at us, not down. Like it or not, Indians, even abroad, now hold their heads up high and they look the world in the eye, which is something we have needed for decades, maybe for over 100 years. Is something we've needed. Self-belief. At this point, I hope the opposition parties don't succeed in the next general election, because it will totally undo what Mr. Modi and the BJP have done for India and for the people of India. It's not just the elite who believe they can do it, but the common man. He believes he can do it. He doesn't believe he's stupid, ignorant, illiterate. Even if he is illiterate, he still holds his head up high, much higher than it used to be. Now, when you get a whole nation like this waking up and believing in itself, that's when you begin to get everybody else's mindset going, and they get worried. Why? I said earlier, the brain drain seems to have been reversed. What does it mean? Trained personnel stay here. The supply chains from here to Western Europe and the UK, UK to the USA, Western Europe to USA, that's been chopped. It's been messed up totally. Because your basic starting point isn't there anymore. You've got to do your starting in Europe, or in the UK, or in the US. Now you think about that. Once all this starts happening in India, trained personnel here, industry and investment starts coming here rather than going abroad. Their production levels and productivity goes down. Why? There's nobody there to take charge. What did the Congress do with organizations like DRDO, HAL, ISRO? They starved them for funds. They put them on the back burner. They just wouldn't let them progress. Mr. Modi comes along and says, show me what you can do. And boy, did they show us. You see the huge defense import bill. That has been chopped to a mere fraction of what it used to be. And in time, it'll disappear altogether. Okay, we still don't make civil aircraft. That is something we have to look into. But we're making our own fighter aircraft. We're making our own missiles, missile defense system, attack missiles, which is something which was unheard of even 10 years ago. If it looked like coming up, the UPA government put a hammer on it and said, no, stay behind, and put it on the back burner. Why? They were interested only in getting it from outside. Backhanded commissions. You've got this I.N.D.I.A. alliance. Ask any man on the street, he'll tell you. This is a conglomerate or corporation of a bunch of thieves. All they've been doing, all their political lives, is looting the country, every which way to sunset. And they're bothered because all their avenues for looting have been stopped. They don't like it. They would like to get back in power, undo what Modi has done. And what Modi has done is plug all the leaks so that they can start looting again. You see, this looting, why is it so horrendous? Nobody would have minded if that money had been kept in India and used to develop India. But what happens is it gets sent abroad, usually via Hawala or something like this. And it's invested in already developed countries. How does that help us? It doesn't. It keeps us down and out. It keeps us uneducated, illiterate, non-thinking people, i.e. the slaves of the West, at their beck and call. We still used to want or crave to be accepted by Western countries. That was the standard. I've arrived. Now they have no option. They have to look at all and every one of us, each and every one of us, as equals. Like it or not, they have to. Because their future lies here. The Chinese started flexing too much muscle. Result, they're all moving out of China. Where are they going? A lot of them are coming to India. And China, which used to be the manufacturing hub of the world, is now losing its glamour. So, let's not get our facts wrong. Let's get to the truth of the matter. Modi and the BJP have done what no other government has done since 1947. It has started developing this country rather than looting it. Because the Congress got freedom or helped to get freedom for India to take over as a new colonial power. Modi is destroying that. And good luck to you, Mr. Modi. I hope this is continued. And I hope whoever follows you, hopefully the BJP continues with what you started. Because we need it in this country. So you see, Chandrayan is not just a moonshot. It has done so much for this country and changed the entire working system of the whole world. Because now, when Indians believe in themselves, they begin to go places. And they do it at a much cheaper price. How they do it, I don't know. Except one small clue. Indians are superb at what the British Army folk used to say, scrounging. Now I don't mean stealing. I mean substitution. What do I mean by that? I'll give you an example. I found this in a rural area, small village. A lad who used to service tractors. You know the feelers for spacing on those rocker brackets? Steel ones were expensive items. Now this is almost half a century ago. Remember that. If one of those sets cost 100 rupees, it was a huge amount of money. And these kept getting stolen, or pinched, or misplaced. How did he solve that? He'd go to the post office and get a whole lot of fresh, brand new postcards. And instead of feelers, he used these. He gave him perfect spacing. With each postcard, it only cost him 5 paisa. Well worth the risk or the expense. At least he wouldn't lose those feelers, which were expensive items. You understand what I mean? Substitution. Scrounging to others. And if you look around, India is full of such things. Maybe having been deprived of so much for so long, we've learned to understand this and find alternatives. So, even if a person may be what you call uneducated or illiterate, it doesn't mean he's stupid. He still has a damn good brain. And he knows how to use it too. Let's help him to use it in the right direction. Not in the way politicians have been using their brains for the past 70 odd years to loot the country, but use it to develop the country, to develop its people. Give us a chance. And many other ways. For instance, you look at the railways, all these Vande Bharat trains. They're all designed, manufactured and run by Indians in India. The Japanese want to know, can they use our technology in Japan? Unheard of even 10 years ago? What about now? And these are super fast, well not super fast, but fast intercity expresses. It cuts a lot of time and it gives you a refreshed feeling when you get to the other end. You can have a little snooze there. So many different ways. Now what they dislike is this. Another reason for disliking him is Mr. Modi has been governing India as if it was a corporation. And I don't mean a municipal corporation, I mean a corporate company. As the CEO, his job is to find and put the right person in the right job. He's obviously done a good job. Why? See the results. Did any of the other governments manage to do this? No. Because all they were doing was how much more they could loot out of whatever they were funds they had at their disposal. Now this corporation or this group of people has done something which is unimaginable for people in India. You go to Uttar Pradesh, UP, and see what he's done there. That is Yogi Adityanath ji. He's got his priorities right, as Mr. Modi has got his priorities right. Yes, there are problems still, and they have to be seen and looked at and solved. But it will only be solved if all of us work together. The opposition parties simply believe they have to oppose anything he does. They don't even understand what opposition means, or responsible opposition is something that they just don't know about, they don't understand it. That is why no matter what, they will oppose it. They don't care whether it's for the benefit of this country or against the interests of this country, but they will oppose it. And such people, you want as leaders, you call them leaders? I don't, I'm sorry. So let's learn from this. Yes, there were mistakes in the past. Learn from them. Correct them for the future. And please understand, there is only one secular political party in India, and that is the BJP. I pointed out before, the Congress is a communal party. Why? It is pro-Muslim and anti-Hindu. Now, anti-Hindu means against 80% of the population of this country. So why do we want such a bunch of people ruling this country? When the government is against the very people who put them there, why do we want such people? Think about it. Well, folks, I think that's enough for this one. Let's see if we find something to talk about later. Please, if you like, subscribe, pass it on to your friends, relatives, your groups and so on. Ask them to pass it on. Because this is something that's important. Ciao.